you just saw with the other woman really did happen to my next guest, Lois. She, listen to this, was out selling Girl Scout cookies with her daughter at the time. She rang a doorbell in a nearby home, and a woman answered. And Lois, tell us what happened next.
Actually, my daughter had gone in to deliver the cookies, and she came back out to the car and said, "Would you like to go in for a cup of coffee?" And so I went in to have a cup of coffee. I didn't really feel real comfortable with it because my daughter was familiar with his family, but I wasn't. And
did your daughter know about the affair?
No.
Okay.
No. But it was very interesting because she had spent time with
your
these
daughter,
kids,
with your kids,
with her with the other kids. Because what happened was that
your daughter had spent time with this other woman's kids.
Children.
Okay.
Yes. She said, as we were having coffee, she said, "Well, I suppose you know we've been having some problems over here." And I'm like,
"So why did you go in for coffee, Lois?"
I didn't know how to refuse.
Yeah, I couldn't say no. Okay.
Yeah, and so I went in. I just thought, well, it's a polite thing to do. Even not knowing the woman very well, I thought, well, Maria knows the kids. She can play with them. I'll have a cup of coffee, and it's
so the
no
woman
problem.
assumed you knew.
She was sure that I knew. Apparently, my ex-husband had indicated that I was aware of all of this and I was okay with it. And she said, I think you know we're having some problems. And I said, I don't know anything about your life. And she said, well, your husband and I are having problems and we're breaking up. And I'm like, breaking up from what? And she said, well, you know that the boys are his children. And I'm like, no, I had no idea.
When was this, Lois? When did
this was in March of '95. It was my 19th wedding anniversary to the day. And
it was on your 19th wedding anniversary.
Yes. I don't think she knew that that's what that day was, but it was significant.
And
for
how
me,
old were the
obviously.
boys?
The boys, I think, were 6 and 4, something like that.
And this was where, in your neighborhood? Because where do you sell Girl Scouts?
Fairly close to our neighborhood, yes. But it turns out that my ex-husband and this woman had been obviously carrying on for quite some time because they had children who were the ages that they were. And he had, I knew that he knew these people, but I had always assumed that there was a husband. He talked about an individual by name that I thought was the husband, and so I thought that there was an intact family there, and I was always a little bit puzzled about why couldn't I get to know this family. And
but you never suspected that your husband was having an affair.
I didn't, but like Catherine, when she found out, I started reviewing things.
What was his profession?
In your mind. He was unemployed at the time. So.
And you were employed outside the home?
I was employed outside the home.
But for him to have 6-year-old sons means it had been going on
right. I assumed it was like 7 or 8 years.
How do you then confront him? I mean, I'm sure that moment that we reenacted, you didn't confront him?
I was in shock. I was numb. And before I was able to confront him, this was a Sunday afternoon. On Monday, he said, well, I guess you found out something about me, because the other woman had told him that she had told me. And
wait a minute, you went home and acted normal?
I tried to.
She was in shock. You were in shock.
I'm a woman, and I was in shock, and I did not want to believe any of it. And so I tried at first to pretend that it wasn't real. I wanted it to not be there.
Be real, yeah. And I can imagine that.
So I
But I'm just thinking that moment where you then see your husband. He comes in the door. Do you say hello? Do you cook the dinner? Do you get in bed together?
There was no bed after that.
There was no bed?
No. Because I found out.
I don't mean sex. I mean, just do you physically get in the bed?
No. I started sleeping in my daughter's room.
Okay.
And for some reason, I had an excuse or something that night. And then the next day, when he...
Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I found an excuse, yeah. Whatever. And so then the next day,
he confronted you.
He told me about it. And I was like... I was in shock for a very long time. Denial is
How many
very
children
strong.
did you all have together?
We have 2. Mm-hmm. And he has 2 others.
And how soon after that did you divorce him?
Well, actually, I waited quite a while for a lot of reasons. For one thing, I felt it was really important to keep our family intact. Uh-huh. Now, I told my kids right away on the advice. Yeah, I went to the employee assistance program from work,
and you did.
And
tell
they
your
advised
kids.
me to tell my kids right away because they were 10 and 16, and.
Yeah, because how do you keep that
a
secret?
Yeah. Erodes a lot of trust. So I talked to them right away, and they would have known that something was going on just by the currents that were in the...
My dad died, and 2 completely different families showed up to the funeral. My dad died randomly on a Tuesday morning, and my whole family was obviously in just like horrible grief. He was a picture of perfect health, and nobody expected him to pass away like that. The funeral was supposed to be really small. Immediate family, a few friends, people he worked with, nothing unusual. The service was halfway through when the back doors opened. I remember turning around when the doors opened more out of like instinct, not so much curiosity, and I saw a woman walk in first. She looked like she didn't belong there. Not like she wasn't dressed right or anything, but like she had walked into the wrong place and realized it too late, except she hadn't. Behind her stood 2 teenage boys, maybe like 14 or 15. She stood there for a second, scanning the room, and then asked the funeral director, "Is this Mark Ellis's funeral?" Mom stiffened whenever she heard this woman say my dad's name. That's when I noticed that the 2 teenage boys weren't looking inside the coffin like they were looking at a stranger. They were looking inside of it like they knew who he was. The director pointed her towards the front where he was laying, really confused looking. When she reached the front of the pews where she saw that we were sitting, she looked at my mom and me and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know he had another family." And of course, it's a funeral, nobody's really talking, and everybody heard her, and you could just feel the tension in the room. My mom didn't speak at first. She kind of just sat there like still shocked, like she was trying to piece together a memory of this woman that she couldn't find. But the woman kept going anyway. She said that she'd been with my dad for 15 years. Not recently, not casually. They lived about 2 hours away from there, and the 2 teenage boys were his. After a long time, my mom finally said very quietly, "That's not possible." Then she pulled out her phone, showed pictures of holidays, birthdays, a man who was my dad but didn't look familiar to me. This man had on different clothes, he lived at a different house, had a completely different life. That same face. The boys, they didn't really say much. One of them just kept staring at the floor. The other one asked, "Is he really gone?" And of course, him saying that just made it so much more real that my dad wasn't who we thought he was. People started whispering behind us. Family that had known my dad for decades all of a sudden wasn't so sure that they actually knew him at all. My mom asked how long they had been together. I guess she didn't hear it the first time, and the woman reassured her they'd been together for 16 years. But she also said that she didn't find out about my mom until a year ago, because someone from my dad's work came forward, and then another person from an entirely different town. So yeah, he didn't just have 2 families. So the funeral didn't really continue after that. People just kind of scattered into conversations in different corners. And I just sat there thinking, how could I know someone for my entire life and really not know them at all?
Story time on how my dad had a whole separate family and was married to my mother and had a whole other family that he was raising at the same time. So back all from as long as I could remember, there was always some sort of turmoil with my mother and my father. He was always coming and going. He'd say he'd work out of state. My dad was one of these people that were like a get rich quick kind of guy, right? So he never worked for the man. He wanted to work for himself. So my mom was always a pretty steady source of income. My dad always made money, but we never quite understood how. He was a cop. He was a truck driver. There was like multiple things he would do. side hustles, I don't even know. But for as long as that I can remember, is my dad was in and out of our lives, right? And so one time my mom and dad work it out, and we get this beautiful house, and I'm so excited. Like, we're living in this, I'm probably like, I think I'm in like 5th grade or something like that, right? So we get this gorgeous house, and I feel like we're finally living like that life, right? From apartments to the house, And within a year of living in this house, my dad basically came home one day and told my mom he wanted her to leave. And I remember this distinctly. I'm like 11 at this time. And my mom like folded. I remember she was just laying in bed, and my dad would come to her every like couple days and be like, "You need to get out. You need to find a place to live. You and the kids need to leave," right? And I remember at that young age, like being like, "Mom, we have to leave. What are we gonna do? Like, how are we gonna take care of ourselves?" So I pulled out a paper, because back then you looked at stuff on the newspaper. So I pulled out a newspaper and I started circling apartments all at 11, because my mom was not handling all of this well, rightfully so, right? I started calling. One of my good childhood friends had moved to this certain area, and so I decided I'm going to call and try to find us an apartment there. So I did. I called. I pretended to be my mother, all at 11 years old. I remember asking my mom, "What are things that we need in our apartment?" And she would say, "We want like a washer and dryer. We want, garage, stuff like that," right? So I would call and say, "Does this have this? Does it have that?" So I set up an appointment with the guy, and my mom went to meet with them, and we got the apartment, and we moved out. Um, then shortly after we're moving out, here comes my dad again, right? My mom had a car and all this stuff, and he wants to try to work it out with my mom. My mom's like, "No, not this time. I'm not doing it with you. I'm not." So, anyways, back and forth. He decides, he gets angry at my mom because she's refusing to take it back. So he takes all our vehicles. So now we live in an apartment with no car. My mom has to get to work. She is taking the bus every day, city bus every day. And that would mean that when we needed to go grocery shopping, we would have to take bikes to go get it. Me and my brother would, my younger brother. Or my mom would take the bus, right? So that's the kind of guy my dad was. He left his family high and dry, right? I'm sure we're not the only ones this ever happened to. But so we end up going to the grocery store. One time we have a crazy snowstorm, and my mom is like, the bus can't make it up the hill where we live. So she has to walk in the snowstorm. And I remember as a young kid being like super worried about my mom and walking halfway to meet her. Because I was like, how is she going to make it up this hill? Like, it was iced over. They couldn't get up, just stuff like that. Like, I say all this to tell you like the challenging times that we went through, and how this proceeds in my life, and how now this has all turned out, right? So it's crazy. I'm older, I've gone to therapy, and I process some of these things, but every now and then something will just trigger me, and I'm like, I can't believe the kind of man my dad was, right? So, anyways, years later, this is on and off. My dad won't leave my mom alone. He's still we're living. He comes, he shows up. He makes false promises to my brothers, me. He'll try to get me to do stuff for him. He's a user. Like, he's wants me to drive his truck somewhere. Can you help me do this? And as a young kid, you just want your dad to like love you and accept you, and you miss the life you had, because we lived in this beautiful fairy tale house. And now we're struggling. No food. Like, we had food, but it was like hard. We had a place to live, but it wasn't as nice. Now we had no vehicles. My mom was struggling. She's tired. She can't, there's no time for us. So we're just living a different life. And I wanted that life back. As a kid, you do. You don't understand the process, right? So flash forward to like 14 years later, like when I'm 14. So 3 or 4 years later, after all of this, I'm going to the mall with my friends. Now I'm like 14. I take the city bus to the mall with my friends. I'm walking through the mall. Literally, my dad had been at our house the night before begging my mom back, right? And my mom's like, "No, I don't want to." I'm walking in the mall with my friends, and I see my dad with an entire family. They got 4 kids. There's a woman there. He's pushing them in the stroller, and I just watch them pass me. And he makes eye contact with me, but he acts like he doesn't know me, right? And I remember that being a very determining, changing, life-changing moment, right? I just was like, my brain processed like, oh, what is this? You know? Here I am thinking we were the only kids. I knew he had kids before he got married to my mother, but these kids were like my age and my younger brother's age. So I was like, what is going on? Like, who is this person? And why is my dad just completely ignoring me, right? I was a pretty rebellious teenager, so when I saw this, I got it. I understood what was happening. I knew my dad had another family. I didn't know if my mom knew or not, but I was going to tell her because I'm like, this is, and my dad would not acknowledge me. I did end up going to the parking lot, breaking in his car windows. My dad is very materialistic, so his cars were like his gold. So I threw a brick through one of his windows. I took the bus home, and I went to my mother, and I was like, I saw Dad. He has another family. And my mom said, I know.
I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and we lost our father 3 years ago. Not because he died or anything, just because he had an affair with a 31-year-old, and now he has a 6-year-old baby and a 1-year-old baby. It's been a while since this has happened, and I've never spoken about it publicly, or mostly not even privately with most people. But I just had an interview with the magazine, and they asked me how many siblings I had, and I was like, oh, I'm one of 4. And then I was like, oh no, I'm one of 6, because there are now 2 new girls. One is 1 and I'm 37. Like, how the fuck does that happen? That's supposed to be my child. 2021, I went to visit my parents in July, on July 4th weekend, and it was a beautiful time. Like, it was like my dad was in the backyard watering plants, my mom was under a gazebo. I had a beautiful visit. And then I go back to LA, and I'm in a writing camp in Joshua Tree, and my mom FaceTimes me like 15 times, and I'm like, we don't even have that kind of relationship for her to be FaceTiming me. So I pick up, and the first thing she says is, you knew? And I'm like, I knew what? What are you talking about? So I go outside, and she's like, you knew your dad had a 4-year-old daughter? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I call Al, who's my dad, and all he says on the phone is, and y'all need to mind your business. I'm like, what? You are my business. You're my father. Lo and behold, guys, I had no idea that this was the start of the demise of my father in my life. He lived so far in his duality of both these lives that he had that I don't think he ever thought he would get found out or he would ever have to explain his other family to us. Needless to say, that was July. My mom told me that she found it a week prior. And let me tell you guys how she found out. So my parents have 3 cars at the house, and my mom's car was being worked on, so she took my dad's truck. And she found a ticket in the side of the door of his car, and that ticket sent her spiraling. I grew up in New York, and I'm from there, and anybody in New York knows Easy Pass. Easy Pass is most states have it. It's the system where you go through tolls, and they just like scan the little box in your car. My mom pays all the bills in the house. My dad just gives my mom money, and then she takes care of it. My dad got a new credit card and did not give it to my mother, and then didn't realize Easy Pass was on that credit card. And so my mom's getting all these tickets in the mail every day he's going through. The Easy Pass is not updated, and my mom's like, yo, what's going on? By the way, my dad's retired. So he used to work across the bridge, and now he shouldn't be going across the bridge every day, let alone multiple times a day. So my mom's like, why are you going across the bridge so much? He's like, oh, I'm consulting, yada, 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 whatever. So she finds the ticket, obviously, and the ticket was on the side of the bridge that my dad had been going to. Lo and behold, my mom goes across the bridge. She goes to like one of the ticketing centers to get information on where the ticket was given. And the lady's like, I can't give you any information. I just can't. And my mom heard the lady's accent. She said she was Jamaican. So she was like, I pleaded to her Jamaican womanness. And she was like, listen to me. I believe my husband is cheating on me. I believe the girl lives here. You're Caribbean. You understand how this goes. And the lady gave my mom the address, which God forbid that she gets caught from this, but she should be fired. Gave my mom the address. My mom goes to the girl's house, knocks on the girl's door. The girl opens the door. She's like, "I've been waiting to meet you." What? Girl then goes, "I've been waiting to meet you. Al told me you guys are not together. You just live in the same house. And, Alex is always traveling, talking about me. So we've been waiting for me to meet him. And your other son lives in Arizona. And then your other son is in LA too." And my mom's like, "Are you talking about my kids?" Which, as a woman, I'm sure that's insane to hear. So my mom smacks her, obviously. Leaves, calls me immediately. And she's like, "Yo, I've been sitting on this info. I only called you because I knew once you found out, shit would hit the fan." Obviously, I find out. I call all my siblings. I call my aunt. I call my uncle. And now one of my mom's best friends is rolling up to the house with a bat to beat my dad up. I fly to New York to confront my father. And this man kept coming to the house and locking himself in the guest room, waking up at 5 a.m. when my mom was still asleep, and coming home after like 11 when mom was asleep so he wouldn't have to confront her. After my mom discovered the girl in real life. Let me know if you guys want the rest of the story.